Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. Welcome to this partner session hosted by Temasek Foundation in conjunction with Philanthropy Asia Summit 2025. My name is Livia and I will be your MC. The theme of the 2025 Summit, Priming Asia for Good, spotlights Asian solutions and innovations to address global challenges across climate, health, and education. Today we will focus on climate with a theme of investing in tomorrow, blended finance driving nature-based solutions. As the host of this session, Temasek Foundation is a strong supporter of nature-based solutions in Asia. As the region faces rapid development and climate challenges, these solutions can unlock long-term benefits that will benefit both planet and people. We will hear from our partners driving nature-based solutions across Southeast Asia. These presentations will highlight the power of partnerships and financial models across public, private, and philanthropic sectors. Through catalytic capital, these initiatives will accelerate climate action as well as create lasting impact. Without further ado, let's put our hands together and welcome Ms. Heng Li Lang, Head of Climate and Livability at Temasek Foundation.
Valued partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Li Lang from Temasek Foundation, and I'm truly delighted to welcome you today to today's session, Investing in Tomorrow, How Blended Finance Can Power Nature-Based Solutions. It's heartening to see such a diverse, passionate group of people gather here today. And we come from different sector and background, but we share one vision. That is to build a greener, more sustainable future for our region and our planet. For those who are not familiar with Temasek Foundation, let me say a few words about ourselves. Temasek Foundation is the philanthropic arm of Temasek, a global investment company headquartered here in Singapore. We deploy catalytic capital to catalyze ideas and pilot solutions. Our work is guided with 3 Ps. The first P, planet, people, and profit. It is about protecting the environment, uplifting the community, increase the income of smallholder farmers, and enabling sustainable economic growth together. So nature-based solutions are the cornerstone of our work. We recognize the enormous potential, mitigating emissions, restoring ecosystem, and improving smallholder livelihoods. So while many solutions has proven these benefits, financial viability models to scale remain limited. This is why blended finance can be a transformative, bring together public, philanthropy, and private capital to de-risk investment and drive systemic change. In today's session, you hear from 3 speakers, or 3 groups of speakers. We'll dive deeper into how nature-based solutions can structure to succeed, focusing on 1, how financial institutions and banks can support and scale sustainability palm oil replanting, and how stakeholders can apply similar financing model to other crops and ecosystems such as rice and mangrove. 2, how venture capital in partnership with private and public players can grow bold finance climate projects from sustainable rice farming to forest management with strong economic, environment, and community benefits. And 3rd, how philanthropic capital can play a catalytic role to de-risk projects, piloting new models, and creating data and learnings needed to scale. So at Temasek Foundation, we believe no single organization can solve this alone. This is why today is so important. is about building momentum together. So let's turn ideas into action, let's forge new partnerships, and let's scale nature-based solutions that can make a real difference for people, for planet, and for generations to come. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Li Lang. Our first speaker will be Mr. Arthur Slaterberg, Managing Director at Climate Smart Fund, Alba Nordic, which was established in Oslo in 2008 as a public-private partnership. The fund invests in companies in Africa and Asia that offer financial services to low-income households. Alba Nordic currently manages 6 funds with a total commitment of $470 million USD. Mr. Slaterberg has extensive experience in the financial sector and was split on blended finance model on sustainable oil palm replanting in Indonesia. This approach promotes sustainable practices and boosts productivity for smallholder farmers' access to farm financing. Please welcome Mr. Slaterberg.
Thank you, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here, hosted by you, Ms. Li Lang, and it has been very interesting for us so far, and we're looking forward to share with you our experience about a topic that many talk about, but it's easier to talk about it than do it. It's about replanting and intensification of farming in Indonesia. So we are all familiar with the challenges about encroachment in the rainforest of Indonesia. It's a global problem, influences the globe, just like encroachment in the Amazon. And we are concentrating on providing solutions for smallholders. We are not dealing with the big plantations, but with the smallholders. And let me start by underscoring that we understand fully that there are good reasons why the smallholders in Indonesia act as they do, also when they encroach. They are faced with, they are not wealthy people. They are faced increasingly with climate challenges. They also have weak land rights typically and weak community rights that reinforce the problem. And who is going to finance their investments if they want to replant and intensify the existing production on their existing fields? That's basically very few who offer them that service. So here we come in. And here, I think you see the essence of the project on the very bottom line here. We try to offer a solution that makes it profitable for the individual smallholder farmers to team up with us instead of encroaching into the forest, which is a tempting alternative. And so in other words, we want to represent a sustainable and climate-friendly alternative to them. And you see the first part, providing under number 1 here, providing capital is only one part of the solution. The more tricky thing that has taken us a lot of hard work is to add the other services. Training, which has fortunately yielded tremendous results in our case, typically increasing productivity in East Kalimantan, where we have been most active, with 25%. And we also offer village planning, has been done now in 12 communities, 12 villages in East Kalimantan. It's also something that is very rare. I mean, I'm sure there are some Indonesians here among the audience. You know what, village planning is not frequently done. It's not easy to make a whole village agree on who owns what and what should the land be used for, but it's crucial for our projects. Land titles is also an issue. For the sake of time, the clock is ticking. I have to speed up, but it's important. You all see that. Sustainability certificates make you more attractive as a producer nowadays. It didn't used to be the case, but now it's increasingly becoming important for them for offsetting their produce. And full traceability is also something we offer as part of the package. I should add that my two good colleagues, Hans in the Batik is the local manager running this project from Jakarta, together with Elin, who is the program director based with me in Oslo. Finally, we verify, of course. It's not nonsense in our experience that you can simply rely on some fancy satellites. You need people on the ground to verify, and we have people in the villages verifying what's happening. So this is an illustration of how a cooperation can look like. It's very complicated. I don't expect you to take this in a second, but Temasek is a vital part here, providing, you see in the upper left corner, credit guarantees for the long-term loans that we at Able Nordic provide to these clients. In this case, for replanting of palm oil. We provide 8 to 10 year long loans. Not many others are willing to do so. And we have a range of people also supporting the various items that go into the product. And this is not easy to replicate, as I indicated, to set up a team like this. It's like establishing an orchestra. And ultimately, we hope what they play for us will sound good. And we do believe so, that will be the case. Just to give you some hope for the future, this is an illustration showing the reality on the ground. In our case, this is from East Kalimantan. You see the green line. It depicts the yield that the farmers that we are associated with in East Kalimantan typically get from their plots. Tons of palm oil fruit bunches per year per hectare. Typically 12, 13 hands, if I'm not mistaken. And you see the blue line is our prognosis, what we could yield from replanting. We thought by new fresh plant material supported with better practices, with fertilizer use extensively, you could double that volume. The red line depicts where we're actually heading. So you see, we have been positively surprised about how quickly production picks up. And of course, this has tangible effect on the income of a given family. This is the crux of the matter. If we could not demonstrate this, we, especially as foreigners, we love the orangutan, but people need income. That's crucial. We are measured. We all have to suffer under there's always some people measuring us, isn't it? Or even at Temasek, I guess you are measured. And of course, the crucial thing is to the very right here, you see impact. That is the reason why the Ministry of Climate and Environment has sponsored our project to a large extent. They want to reduce the encroachment in the forest. But the way to get there is by the way of outcome, that people see it's more profitable, much more profitable, to team up with us than encroach into the forest. And even in Indonesia too, it's illegal, right? So it's not risk-free, far from it. And you see we are very tangible. Ilang, you put up some very explicit target for us in the project that we have in Sumatra, and we like that. We like to be very explicit. So that you see there. Let's jump to the next slide, and what main reason why we're here. We are now at a stage where we want to ramp up. We see things are working just as we hoped, and that is very reassuring. Now we want to mobilize more capital. You can see on the left hand here, you see the kind of capital that we are after. It's equity capital, A, B, and C shares with different risk-reward profiles. And we have room for grants and guarantees. You see some of the slots are already being inhabited, so to speak. Temasek, as I mentioned, has very generously provided a credit guarantee for the long-term loans we are offering in Sumatra. And the climate team at the Ministry of Environment and Climate back home in Oslo has provided both C-class shares and grants. And you see also a couple of family offices from Scandinavia has offered A shares. But here, there's room for more. But this is a good example, we think, about blended finance, whereby pulling our forces together, the overall risk is much reduced and it becomes acceptable for the individual investors. Just very quickly, the areas where we are active today in Indonesia, you see there are various parts of Indonesia. It's also various crops. We are crop agnostic. Whatever can work in a setting to intensify output or farming on existing plots, we can do. And we do. Cocoa, coffee, for instance, and also not only in Sumatra or and Kalimantan, but also elsewhere. And you see our goals, our ambitions is on the right-hand scales. If we are lucky with our fundraising, we'll try to reach tens of thousands of farmers in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Again, this is the essence you see here. In order to protect the forest, we need to present a viable solution that is attractive for the individual farmers. That's how we see it. That's what we live for and breathe. And we want to present a solution that implies that we work with the local communities, not against them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Slaterberg, for your insightful presentation on combating deforestation while making it sustainably viable for smallholder farmers. Our next speaker will be Ms. Lisa Genesee, Managing Director of Sustainable Finance at ADM Capital. As an investment manager, ADM Capital is focused on sustainable and impact-driven investments across Asia and emerging markets. Please welcome Ms. Genesee.
Thanks, Livia. And thanks so much to Temasek Foundation for having us. Palm oil and forestry, these are not generally commodities that one thinks of and associates with in association with sustainability. But these are the tough nuts. These are the tough problems that we have to solve. Hence the previous presentation and our presentation, which involves a wood products company in Indonesia. And I'll tell you that story, how we got involved, why we got involved, and the importance of, again, solving these tough nuts in the forestry sector and in palm oil. So why I'm here, I'm talking specifically about a sustainable forest management project developed with a model, developed with an Indonesian wood products business, Arimba. I'm pleased to say that Andrew, who's the third generation leader of that company, is here today, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any more extensive questions about the company and its long history. But in terms of ADM Capital and why we're doing this, ADM Capital is a private credit manager established in 1998 by 3 British partners based in Hong Kong. We've been investing in SMEs across Asia since 2006. We consider our borrowers partners, and we stay close over the life of a transaction. That is both in terms of credit, making sure they grow and that we get paid back, and managing environmental and social risk. That means building resilience in the company with the future expectation of better exits for us and cheaper credit for the company upon our exit. So this has been a journey for us. In 2006, ADM Capital established a foundation to look at the hairy underbelly of the Asian growth story and promote systemic change rooted in data and research. And among the topics we looked at was deforestation associated with agriculture commodity production and illegal forestry. SMEs are the engine of growth of our Asian economies, yet receive inadequate capital. This is part of the challenge that we face. SMEs are also where the burden of climate transition falls. And again, there is inadequate financial support for that transition. Over time, it became clear that in order to make real change with SMEs, there was a need for a hybrid investment model. And that should involve a commercial credit fund managed by ADM Capital and supported by a risk product to encourage investors to step in. We believe there was a misperception of risk in the sector that could be managed with extensive due diligence, different types of catalytic capital, structuring for downside protection, team on the ground, we have 3 in Indonesia, to support engagement and monitoring. The result was the Asia Climate Smart Landscape Fund, an ADM Capital Impact Fund for Indonesia, focused on transitioning companies in agriculture commodities, aquaculture, and wood products. We set targets for this fund in emissions reduction, better land use management, livelihoods and gender, which we see as interrelated and critical to lead the transition. 50% of our carry is linked to achieving these impact targets, so we put our money really where our mouth is. Launched in December 2023 with 6 catalytic investors, we have 2 projects now in progress, including the one that I'm going to talk about today. We achieved a US Development Finance Corporation guarantee product for the fund, which helped bring in early investors. We offer senior secured debt to the processors and mills buying from smallholders or smaller companies in Indonesia. And we use our loan documents, mandatory reporting, and catalytic grant money to help our companies achieve better practice in terms of financial performance, governance, and sustainability. Most importantly, the companies to which we provide credit on commercial terms are managed by sponsors or owners who see that climate is changing and that communities and conservation can no longer be ignored as part of a commercial project. And what characterizes our borrowers, and I think if you speak to Andrew, you'll feel this immediately, is that they're forward-thinking. They want their businesses to be stronger, and they want to be ready for a climate-challenged future. Just a little context, which I think is important here. The forests of Kalimantan are some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, yet have suffered among the highest rates of deforestation globally. And over the past 50 years, the island has lost more than 50% of forest cover to conversion for agriculture, land clearance, and illegal logging. Production forests in Indonesia have long been managed and used economically to improve people's welfare and royalties to fund the government. In 2000, logging occupied 247,000 square kilometers of forested area in Indonesia, contributing $9 billion a year to the economy. By 2015, the concessions had shrunk to 206,000 square kilometers. Under selective logging, when it's done properly, only commercially valuable trees larger than a certain diameter are allowed to be felled, and that's key to our strategy. This leaves other trees standing for long-term generation. Typically, between 2 and 20 trees are removed from each hectare of forest once every few decades. And this leaves more than 90% of the trees standing. The remaining vegetation recognizably constitutes a forest. According to a 2020 biological conservation article, the removal of specific large trees causes some biodiversity loss, but far less than other land use practice, such as conversion of the forest or even leaving it in an idle concession so that it's no longer protected. These forests need commercially viable activity within them in order to maintain them. So if properly assessed and managed, selectively logged forests, including adopting reduced impact logging practices, can act as important habitat buffers, corridors for biodiversity, and potential conservation areas. Although mandatory under Indonesian law and natural forests, selective logging is not always practiced. Indeed, much of the logging, up to 75% in the past, has been illegal and destructive. Partly this is due to, obviously, the pressure from palm oil, which, while logging has declined, has experienced a boom over the past 4 decades. In Project Forest, where we've had kind support from Temasek Foundation, the objective is improving the transparent and sustainability of a plywood mill and its suppliers, which are concessions operating across 600,000 hectares of biodiverse landscape in East Kalimantan. Post-COVID, Orimba needed $5 million in working capital and machinery repair. The company also could see that sales would be challenged without ensuring that sustainability practices in the supply chain and the mill itself there were sustainable practices, and they turned to ACLF. Alongside working with the company on the financial model, business plan, we crafted with them a procurement policy and a sustainable forest partnership program for suppliers to help secure long-term access to high-quality, sustainably produced raw materials. Another objective is to ensure long-term conservation of areas of tropical forests through set-asides of critical biodiverse areas. And we aim to strengthen forest communities rooted in free, prior, informed consent assessments. So turning to the specific steps agreed under the transaction. One is, of course, improve forest management practices of the supply chain concessions, including mandating for all suppliers wood legality certification, or SVLK, and PHPL, the Indonesian Sustainability Standard. Establish the SFPP, which must include, over the life of the loan, 9 of 12 suppliers. The company's procurement policy now incorporates the new practices and includes, at least initially, upfront cash payments to encourage selling to Orimba and compliance. Mandatory HCV assessments and set-asides of an additional 20% of forests on top of the 10% mandated under law. Costs will be match funded by the SFPP. Indonesia's Tropical Forest Foundation has been hired with the support of Temasek Foundation to support Arimba and to manage action plans for suppliers and monitor progress. Arimba will also encourage suppliers to progress towards Forest Stewardship Council certifications, which carries a premium, but also must be rooted in market demand. So we needed a strategy that also was rooted in commercial viability. In terms of communities living in or adjacent to the concessions, the Sustainable Forest Partnership Program will help expand benefit sharing between the concessions and communities under mandated FPIC assessments, also conducted with some matching financial support. And the project will create, of course, jobs by reactivating idle or distressed concessions. I hope you can see, and I think the theme of today is that this project and the palm oil project that you heard about previously, and indeed all of our projects, is very much about partnership. These projects cannot be done by one company or a loan or even a lending opportunity and a borrower. There need to be partnerships around these transactions. This blended finance transaction leans on ACLF, on Arimba, the Tropical Forest Foundation, consultant providers of ESG, HCV, and FPIC assessments, Temasek Foundation providing catalytic capital for the initial 3 years of the loan, covering 6 suppliers. And we've signed an MOU with the Government of Indonesia Environment Fund, BPDLH, to potentially provide capital to communities post-FPIC assessments. As mentioned, while the TA support is a carrot, we can use our loan documents, and we do use our loan documents to reinforce change. Ahead of any ACLF transaction, there is extensive ESG due diligence from a third-party provider against the IFC performance standards, which is what we use across all of our funds. This identifies environmental and social risk and forms the basis for the Environmental and Social Action Plan, and this is incorporated into our loan documents as a potential event of default with non-compliance, and the company reports quarterly on that action plan. Landscape covenants reinforce our impact targets and are reported on quarterly. And finally, we ask our companies to report semi-annually on 66 KPIs that allow us to monitor progress and gather data, and then annually on our impact targets, which you can see on the board. So great to talk about one specific project, but how do we get to scale? How do we replicate this, and how do we scale this project itself? It's important to be thinking about scale from the beginning of a transaction. How can we create a model that serves for others? And that is very much the basis of the Sustainable Forest Partnership Program that we have created with Arimba. Already there is interest from the Indonesian Government Environment Fund, the Forestry Ministry, industry groups to learn and potentially replicate what we have managed to, what we hope we'll be able to achieve. We've only started this journey, so you have to speak to us in a year or so to understand how it's going. In our transactions, government engagement, however, both national and local, and the ability to showcase within a commercial context how what we are doing works for the company and its suppliers will be a key result of the success of this project or not. And really, I can't emphasize enough that what we are doing must have commercial value in order to scale. We hope in the future that once these inclusive models are more familiar, that we won't need grant capital alongside the commercial capital we provided to the company. I've also been asked to talk about our call to action, because we all need a call to action. We need to know how to respond. You're hearing about these wonderful business models, but how does each person respond as a philanthropist in particular? And that would be, I would say, 3 things. One is to build comfort with partnerships in finance and not to feel discomfort around that concept, around the concept of convening around transactions. This will help carry us forward to business unusual, to rethinking how we structure transactions in the land use space. Another call to action would be alignment on land-related transactions, the standards, the approaches. ACLF is working with a group of others on building an alliance to promote agreement amongst finance companies and NGOs on what those standards should look like. I mean, we know what the standards are, but which ones should be used, which are appropriate, who are the consultants that we should be using in the land use sector. It's modeled on something similar in Brazil. Thirdly, we all, finance, philanthropists, companies, need space to innovate within a commercial context, and catalytic capital provides that opportunity. We're working with SMEs with limited resources, we need to remember that, and already these SMEs are under pressure from buyers to transition. But who pays the cost of that transition, and how does it happen? So we need more types of finance of all types in the sector broadly. Guarantee products, you heard about one earlier that Temasek has provided to the palm oil project. Guarantee products to help get private investors comfortable with the perceived risk in agriculture we believe can be managed. Protecting forests, restoring land is critical both for climate and food security. And there are many philanthropic agendas that can support this, whether they're in education, they're in inclusivity, gender, conservation, health, all are relevant. Most important as philanthropic donors is comfort with helping to pay the costs of transition, providing capital that can fundamentally alter how we produce our food, use our forests, and protect our climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Genesee, for your call to action on partnerships, policies, and standards that balance both commercial, conservation, and community needs. The last presentation before our panel will be delivered by two speakers. Mr. Khoa Nguyen, CEO of NeoRice. He is a farmer entrepreneur in leading innovation in Vietnam's rice sector. Joining him is Mr. Can Chan, managing partner at Touchstone Partners, a Vietnam-based venture capital firm investing in early-stage startups that drive innovation and sustainable growth. Together, they will speak on low-carbon rice in Vietnam. Please welcome me in welcoming Mr. Nguyen and Mr. Chan.
Hello everyone, I'm Khoa Nguyen, a rice grower and the founder of NeoRice, negative emission organic rice.
My name is Khan, I'm from Touchstone Partners, and I've been telling friends here that this is probably the very first time we see a Vietnamese farmer turned entrepreneur on the stage of this profile in Singapore. And I'm very honored to be the supporter or the backer of such amazing founder. Just to set the context, NeoRice is one of the 800 solutions and applications that we are tracking between Temasek Foundation and Touchstone Partners, thanks to the 2 years of running the largest climate tech competition in Vietnam called Net Zero Challenge. So NeoRice was one of the finalists in the very first competition in 2023 that we ran. And basically, so let me go straight to the structure, because I think, we need to capture a lot of information on one slide, so in the interest of time. What you guys, the professionals call blended finance, we call, the way that my co-founder would put it, entrepreneuring our way to help and support the founders. So the structure would be very straightforward. Temasek Foundation is giving a $200,000 US for grant money to NeoRice to prove their solution, which is a rice farming technology anchored by a type of organic fertilizer that would promise a 50% reduction in GHG emission and 10% income for the farmers. So the grant from Temasek Foundation would need to help, so with the grant, Khoa would need to prove that these numbers, these outcomes would work on a 500-hectare farms in Vietnam. And after, so all of these milestones met, these are the condition precedent for our investment into NeoRice as well. So we have a back-to-back agreement between the company, Temasek Foundation, and Touchstone Partners. So now, Khoa will talk more about the issues that this solution is addressing and the product itself.
Yes, you know that we all eat rice. The rice feeds half of the world. But yes, for big problems. Pollution, emission, soil degradation, and from destitution. Yes, billions of dollars have been invested in solution. But the result is not very impressive. So at NeoRice, we developed a no compromise solution that both organic and negative emission. Negative emission, that means we sequester more carbon into the soil that release the methane into the air. So how we do it? You can see the animation, that's a way of spraying. And the core technologies is neo-fertilizer. That's a combination of rocks, minerals, natural minerals. We provide NPK, calcium, magnesium, silic, and bacteria, include purple non-sulfur bacteria that fight against methanogen. So it almost provides all things that the rice need. And for nitrogen, we use azolla, a little ferns that can sequester nitrogen from the air directly into the field. And for carbon sequestration that can make new rice negative emission, so we use biochar. And we also use other technologies like precise seeding and alternate wet drying. So the total, we can lower the emission up to 100% and negative, or at least 50%. So this is the outcome that we need to prove. And we already do it with the Vietnamese government. And we got the enrollment of advanced technology in rice cultivation process of the government, Vietnamese government. So for the same yield, about 7 tons per hectare per season, with the input cost about 400 to 500 USD per hectare, with 70 gross margin compared to other traditional chemical way of rice cultivation, we cut down the cost from 100 to 200 USD per season per hectare. We can reduce the pollution because of organic inputs certificate. And we can increase the soil enrichment and income such as fish or rice fish. And we can do emission reduction, about 5 to 10 credits per season.
So with the grants from Temasek Foundation, so NeoRice would have to prove the technical performance and also the commercial viability of it for the smallholder farmers in Vietnam. That would help unlock risk capital from our funds, but also unlocked other funding sources in Vietnam as well, including government funding, where there's a program that, NeoRice fertilizers users would have up to 50% of subsidies from the government of Vietnam for their rice farming. And this is strategic for Vietnam because Vietnam is one of the top rice exporter in the region. Within 2025, with the 500 hectare grant pilot with Temasek Foundation grant and our risk capital and other source of funding, we're aiming at 2,000 hectares of low emission, low cost rice farming areas. We aim to double that every year to 2007 at 800,000 hectares. However, even with 8,000 hectares, and we meet whatever we set our expectation today, 800,000 hectares is only 0.1% of the farmable areas for rice in Vietnam. We are one of the top 2 rice exporters globally with more than 10% of the global GMVs. And so what needs to happen in the future is we need to make sure that our rice farming is more climate resilient. Our rice is more climate resilient, and so it would not affect the food security, the global food security. So this is challenges, but it's also a huge opportunity in terms of investing as well. So let's talk a little bit about, because we are sort of 6 months into our partnerships, and Khoa and I and Temasek Foundation team have been working on the execution side of it, and there have been challenges, as a foreign investor investing into a company in Vietnam, this company has a factory, has lands, and things like that. There's no straightforward kind of foreign ownership of lands in Vietnam. Farmers' engagement has been very, very tricky as well, very challenging. So the farmers can be very random. They say one thing, but they do the other. They need to be convinced that this technology or whatever you try to promote would be economically viable for them. It's not just changing this way and that way and saving the environment. The farmers would not listen. Intellectual property, right? So this is a very special formula that they put into the fertilizer using what Kwa put it, rocks, natural minerals and rocks, and turn that into organic fertilizer. So that needs to be protected. And there's not so robust kind of IP law in Vietnam. So what do we do about it? So I'm happy to share more about what we've been doing in this. Even grant disbursement has taken 2 months just because his bank did not know what grant, quote unquote, is. So he actually shown the bank the grant agreement between New Rise and Temasek Foundation, and the banks are like, we're not familiar with this. Is it an investment? Is it a loan? Or what is it? It took 2 months for Hua to actually explain to the banks and actually get it through.
So what we need? We need more demo projects. Vietnamese government invest a lot in rice cultivation in Vietnam, about 300 million per year. And I also the one who got support a lot from the government, 1 to 2 million per year to set up demo projects. But the cooperation to international cooperation is a higher level. I need that higher level to rule in the international level. We also need advanced tech, such as drone tech, robot tech, or biotech, to create more advanced technologies and reduce the cost and the cooperation.
Yeah, so maybe this I'll leave it to more like a Q&A time. We're running out of time. But we need more collaboration. We want to build a continuum of capital for such of these solutions in Vietnam. And that we need philanthropies, that we need foundation, risk capital providers, whether it's equity or debt, early stage equity, early stage debt, that would be catalyzing even more capital later on as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen and Mr. Chan, for your ground perspectives on decarbonizing rice in Vietnam. New Rise and Touchstone partners are looking for more support to ease the transition for partners and to invest and co-develop techniques to decarbonize rice farming. We invite all of you to consider them as co-investors and collaborate across carbon initiatives and organic rice markets. We will now move on to our final segment, the panel discussion and Q&A. Please scan the QR code on the screen to submit your questions throughout the panel discussion. This discussion will be moderated by Mr. Benedict Cheong, Chief Systems Integration Officer at Temasek Trust. He leads systems thinking, knowledge, and innovation to amplify the collective impact of the Temasek Trust ecosystem. Please welcome Mr. Cheong and the panel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, panelists, for sharing so such interesting projects that are happening in the front line and all the good things you're doing to reduce carbon. Before we go into the Q&A, I just want to ask and invite Bernard Tan from Golden Philanthropy. I know Bernard for many, many years. He crossed over from being a green man to now doing green work. If you know what I mean, if you know him, you know what I mean. So Bernard will share with us what do you do at Golden Philanthropies. How do you look at this whole idea of blended finance?
Thank you very much, Benedict. And again, thank you for the audience for obviously your attention today and your presence here today. I just want to make a quick pitch of Golden Philanthropies, and one of the reasons why I'm invited here is because I believe I'm a good partner of Temasek Foundation, and we're looking at many projects and investing it together. So Golden Philanthropies was actually set up together when PAA was set up, and it was really meant as a vehicle in which we could accelerate the combat against climate change. We will look to fund projects that focuses on getting us to net zero. And largely, these are either activities to help reduce carbon emissions or to increase carbon sequestration through the conserving and restoring of nature-based carbon sinks. We have Indonesia as our primary focus, largely because it reflects our donor base, but also because of the huge opportunity that exists in that country to basically combat climate change. We also look at the vast carbon sinks that exist in that country and obviously the potential in which we can help develop the agricultural sector. Golden Philanthropy sees ourselves at the upstream of the end of philanthropic capital, meaning to say we're willing to take the risky end. And we believe in employing a small amount of capital in order to seed an initiation of very unique ideas that has no chance of actually seeing the light of day because other kinds of capital do not come across. So this is a form of what we call blended finance. By seeding philanthropic capital, we make the project investable, and then obviously investable capital can come in. Now, we do not just give away money. We obviously have to be convinced that the idea has a reasonable chance of being successful, and that if it does so, it can be scaled rapidly. And this is obviously what makes philanthropic capital catalytic. Obviously, there's another kind of philanthropic capital by going to structures in which we take the first loss, philanthropic capital takes the first loss, and they risk the rest of the capital. That is also a form of capital we will look into, but really at the present moment, what we do is really seed novel ideas. While we're prepared to fund ideas on our own, we also do it with joint participation. And I'm very proud to say that the Golden Philanthropies actually now leads the Sustainable Land Use community in PAA. And our members include the Abdul Latif Jamil Poverty Action Lab, the Oboitius Foundation, TPC, Temasek Foundation, and the UBS Optimus Foundation. And by working together, we create new synergies emerging from knowledge sharing and joint support. The Sustainable Land Use community is in the midst of developing a healthy pipeline of projects, and we invite partners to join us as well. Thank you, Benedict, for the opportunity to just introduce the organization.
Thank you, Bernard. Earlier this afternoon, I was in a meeting conversation and with a team that has done a lot of work in blended finance. And they shared with us that a big mental block, right? A big mental block for philanthropy is this, when you want to consider projects such as this. Why should philanthropy take the first loss for others to gain profit? Why should philanthropy take the first? Bernard, you hinted on that a bit, but I just want to pose it out there because this is the game that's being played today in terms of how philanthropy can catalyze ground impact. But there's still a mental block that goes among philanthropy. So I'm giving you guys some time to take a break for a time, just to put this question to those of you in the room who are in philanthropy. Why should philanthropy take the first loss for others to take profits? And I'm going to put my colleagues in Temasek Foundation on the spot because they've been supporting all these three programs. Sorry, I know you're not on the panel, but I think you need to help us in this thinking, perhaps amplify on what Bernard has said. Thank you, Leela. She didn't expect this at all. She didn't expect this at all, but I actually alerted her that I was going to do this. you can take a mic from here. You can get a mic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ben. I think Bernard articulated it very well. Philanthropy capital is depending on your appetite. You could look for returns. For example, you look at Lisa. Lisa is also impact investors, but she needs to return to give it back to her investors. But she's willing to look at the returns together with impact. So she might be slightly more, I would say, downstream. For philanthropic capital like Temasek Foundation, for us is that if we don't do something, the project might not even kick-started. I think like what Bernard said. And I also insinuated that a lot of the project, you need to gather data, evidence. If you don't have good evidence and data that it works, no one will come in. So for Temasek Foundation, we deploy our funds in that catalytic manner to kickstart show data, and all the projects, we will make sure that all the projects, the data will be transparent to the industry. That means it's not just whether Lisa's project she will have to share with the rest as well, even maybe her competitor, to how they could deploy those capital in Indonesia. So I think this is what we are trying to urge the philanthropic organizations to come together. Each of us will have different appetite. You can say that, hey, I can come in. Once this is proven, I will go to my next step. And that's where I could attract people like, for example, Touchstone's partner as a VC. She has to be accountable to his LP. And he will come in and say, I have this KPI for me to invest. So what I did was I took the entire of his expectations KPI and imposed it on Kwa. This is how sometimes certain things work in that structure. And we hope that more people to come on board depending on your appetite. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lila.
That's exactly because I picked up the point from our Vietnamese friends, right? When they say they go to the bank and the bank didn't understand what this was. Was it a loan or was it a grant or was it, and this is where I think as a group, as a collective group, I think we need to continue to push this concept, this notion of capital coming from a range of options, a spectrum. I'm not so sure blended is the right word because there are some definitions, I don't want to get into that, but definitely blended in that sort of way from a whole range of options. Can I turn to the people who have shared their stories? What was the one, maybe two, most difficult issue or challenge that you have to face in getting these projects off the ground, besides the fact that you had to negotiate with the Temasek Foundation? Leave that out. Yeah. Okay, anyone?
I think not negotiating, but discussing with Temasek Foundation is probably one of the easier tasks.
It was easier. Okay.
But to be honest with you, I mean, apart from Temasek Foundation, we also work with other kind of grants donors and providers as well. Everything from government-linked donors or to private donors and philanthropic capital as well. I mean, why we're doing this is we're enjoying it, but it's also because of our existential kind of purpose as well. Because, like Lee Lang said, right? So we met with like amazing founders like Kwa, and then, but we have the fiduciary duty to our limited partners as well, and one of them is actually another Temasek's family's subsidiary as well. So what do we do? Do we leave him out, or we just help them, right? So that's why we kind of support the founders this way. Yeah.
Maybe I can turn to Arthur.
Yes, I guess I'm looking at my colleagues Elin and Hans now, and I think if we should pick one challenge that has been complicated and that has taken a lot of time in Indonesia, is to find good partners. And of course, Hans lives in Indonesia since a long time ago, but in general, of course, they have a healthy skepticism about foreign entities coming in and telling them how to arrange their lives, and we are very sensitive to that. We need to understand the local context. We don't blame them, as I tried to say in my presentation, but we need, that said, we need to find good and reliable partners ourselves. For instance, a financial institution that can run the books, so to speak, for our loans. We cannot do that ourselves, and we want to be absolutely loyal to the local regulations. I mean, the OJK as a regulator sets up, for instance. So that takes time, but we have been above average persistent, I feel myself, that we have been patient, and I think now we have a solution that might work.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, fundraising is always hard. Fundraising is a real challenge, and particularly when you're trying to, one, make sure that the company that you're investing in, providing capital to, can deliver a return, but at the same time impact. So for us, it was structuring the transaction in Arimba so that we not only didn't stress the company too much financially, that it was affordable, but that we could manage the risk in the project and at the same time deliver significant impact using loan documents and some limited grant funding that we were able to achieve.
Thank you. I'm going to call out questions that some of you have posed. This one, how do I do this? Active. No? Technology is, there you are. A lot of nature projects in ASEAN have unclear land rights and local policy, which hinders commercial interests. How can we better work with governments to support nature-based projects? There's another one that's similar. Let's put out this one. This is directed to you, Arthur, but do you have formal written agreements with that mandates farmers not to, I'm going to have to, because I can't read the iPad, sorry. No. Oh, there, sorry. Not to encroach in forest areas. Are there community-led patrolling to prevent encroachment? So there's a legal and, an enforcement, and how do you get around those? Maybe you can share your experiences.
Yeah, to take that question that's up on the screen now, yes, we do have agreements with the farmers, and that's incredibly important that they agree to do that. And as I tried to allude to, the fact that it's so profitable to team up together, that's what makes them motivated, I think, to adhere to our agreement.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's not because we harass them or punish them. I mean, it's profitable.
Yes.
So they do it voluntarily, more or less. Of course, we have to verify, but that's a problem.
Thank you. Sorry, my phone is talking to me. I don't know why. Lisa, you want to weigh in on that one?
So we're not lending to small farmers. We're lending to companies, to processors, mills that then have agreements with their supply chains. I mean, not in the case of Arimba because they're dealing with concessions. Another project has a smallholder supply chain in coconut sugar. And of course, we mandate that they have agreements with the farmers relative to the purchase of the coconut sugar, and also around NDPE, no deforestation, no peat land development, no exploitation.
So there's a degree of formality and agreements and all, right?
Yeah.
It has to be. Please.
Maybe if I'm allowed to elaborate a little, I mean, the certification that we have secured has been, Hans, I'm looking at you now, but that has been the cooperative of farmers. They have been able to sell those certificates, and that's a substantial income source for the cooperative. So when you talk about community in controlling adherence, that's one thing that motivates the cooperative of farmers to make sure that they stick to the agreements that we have. So it's not self-regulating, but they have their own interest in making this agreement work.
I just want to address the first question on the local regulations and policies. I think the advice is to be very transparent, do communicate or sometimes over-communicate with the regulators and the policymakers as well. In the context of Vietnam, there is a strong push from the Politburo. They just approved a new decree to actually digitize a lot of sectors in Vietnam, including green economy. And they forecast it to have a $300 billion of green economy by 2050, in line with the net zero commitment from our government by 2050. So for example, in our net Zero Challenge that we co-organize with Temasek Foundation, we bring in the policymakers from the government to actually policy think tank, more like think tank, to work with us, and basically they get the front row seat to see the real innovations happening in front of them, and get them communicated and educated that way.
Thank you. Let me take the next question. This one, let's go 2 votes. Not showing. Active. What is the average cost to structure such nature blended transactions, and how long does it take? Average cost?
Yeah, I mean, it took us a year to achieve the DFC guarantee, and then we pay an annual fee for the guarantee. Well, we paid an origination fee and then an annual guarantee on top of those projects that are underneath the guarantee. So it added a year, I guess, to the time that it took to build the fund. But we started in 2021, we launched in 2023, so it probably wasn't too out of line.
Well, the point was made, you have to persevere.
You have to persevere, yes.
Okay, let's take the next question. This one. No, I don't know why this is not working. Technology always wins when it comes to me and technology, so... can we get a question on how is the carbon market in Vietnam? The one with 3 votes? Yes. But it says 3 votes here, but okay. How is the carbon market in Vietnam, and how has carbon project registration come along? Any opportunity for donors to get back carbon credit if successful?
I have some information for you. The carbon market in Vietnam is begin with 2028. 28, yes. And now our government has run a very large carbon project called 1 million hectare project.
Okay.
Right, yeah, with World Bank, backed by the World Bank. And that project is owned by the Ministry of Agriculture. And other companies want to join should be do it in another hectare than outside the 1 million hectare project. Yes. Quite hard to get carbon credit now in Vietnam. Yeah.
Okay, you might have continue this question. Agri-tech in Vietnam, what's the pathway for exit for such companies?
So
fundraising.
It's a great question. I'm sure. Are you working on a live deal or something? But so for agri-tech in Vietnam, there's the agri side and there's a tech side. The agri side is more into the supply chain of input and then the uptaking of the output. There's a tech side of it as well. So when we invest, as an investor, we need to actually ask ourselves the question: are we investing in the technology side, or are we investing in the supply chain of agriculture? So if you are investing in the technology companies, then the chance is that company may have an SPV in Singapore or holding company in Singapore, holding the IP that actually being used for the manufacturing in Vietnam and trading in Vietnam. And then if you invest in the more like into that supply chain in Vietnam, you need to get into the local company as well, which is a little bit more troublesome. Happy to elaborate more.
But this is the second last question. There's another 2 questions I want to put on after this.
So thank you. I repeat again, Golden Philanthropy is looking at basically anything to do with carbon sequestration or reduction in carbon emissions. And we actually look at the seed stage of funding. But perhaps the best way is to tell the story of some of the projects that we actually, one project we actually funded. So this project has to do with a carbon peat dome. Right, and the peat dome, obviously, when people draw concession boundaries, they do not follow the peat dome. It just cuts right across. And in order for us to preserve the entire peat dome, not only would you have to have a company retire his portion of peat dome, you need the 6 villages on the other side to also retire the peat dome. Now, obviously, it's a phenomenal task. I mean, if you ask any of them who are looking at talking to villagers and asking them to surrender their livelihoods in exchange for something that's not very tangible like culture or carbon credits, it can be quite daunting, right? And no private capital will actually do this. So the project manager approached us, and we think it was a good idea. Let's try to get the 6 villages and the company to all retire from the peat dome, preserve it, look at alternative ways in which they can actually cultivate that peat dome, and then obviously look to see whether we can actually get carbon credits for it as part of their remuneration. Now, obviously, again, if companies do that, maybe the villagers will be a little bit more suspicious. But if philanthropy goes there and says, look, if we do a feasibility study with your cooperation and it actually works, are you willing to give this project a chance? And usually the answer will be yes. And that's where philanthropic capital can be catalytic. We can start to organize projects that actually cannot exist without the intervention of philanthropic capital.
So the last set of questions include this one. With limited concessional capital, should philanthropists' role in blended finance focus on funding TA, project structuring and support to investees, or providing first loss, or both? And there's another question, what is your view or experience on recoverable grants? Now, I know I'm not so sure any of you are in the philanthropy scene, and I may have to turn again to the Temasek Foundation to answer this question. Or Bernard, you can take this question. But anyone, please weigh in. This idea, again, even after we have done the first question, this question has come up. And another question is, what's our view on recoverable grants? Anyone?
I'm happy to take the one on recoverable grants because I've had some experience. And my previous life was actually setting up and running the ADM Capital Foundation, which I did for 15 years. So a lot of convening, a lot of catalytic capital put into projects to help stimulate what we felt would be systemic change, or what we identified as systemic change, rooted in research and data. That's just my background. In terms of recoverable grants and where we are now, I find that recoverable grants, if you're asking for a TA facility, if you need a TA facility in order to incentivize a change, you might not be able to recover that grant. There might not, that you need to be able to take the risk that you might lose that grant. So as long as there's the option for that grant not to be recoverable, there's an acceptance that it might be lost, then I think okay. But generally, that money is money that needs to be catalytic and needs to be a grant.
Go ahead, please. And you can
I agree with Lisa.
And you also handle this question.
I agree with Lisa. So when we give money, we are prepared for it to be lost. There are certain times when if it's really for profit purposes, we can include a clause that says, if you actually do make money, give us back that grant we gave originally that was risk capital so that we can cycle it to other causes. And I think that's fair, right? If you're going to make money out of the philanthropic money, at least give the philanthropic money back once you have made a profit.
So there's again, it came out at the meeting I was at. If you're asking me to take the first loss, then please also allow me to take the last gain. In other words, after you've creamed off all your returns as you in the ballpark that you need, there will be some excess, and please allow philanthropy to get back the last gain. As you can see, the conversation can continue. We have nice examples of what's happening in the front line, on the ground, in Vietnam, in Indonesia. But I think the session has to be about how philanthropy needs to broaden its thinking about what we can do to take the first risk, to be prepared to lose that investment, all for the sake of catalyzing the larger impact that we can achieve on the ground. Please join me in thanking our panelists today for sharing all their stories.
May I invite the panelists to stay on stage for a quick group photo? Sorry, can you Thank you to our speakers for your insights and to all of you for the engaging questions. As this session comes to a close, I would like to invite you to take a moment to reflect on your role in catalyzing action in Asia. As we have heard, partnerships are critical to amplifying impact and scalability on the ground. Connect with us and together build a future that is both inclusive and sustainable. With that, we've come to the end of this partner session. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. Please scan the QR code for feedback and have a good evening.